job to keep people safe. He can't legally do it, and he's not under a fiduciary duty to keep your son or your daughter safe. That he cannot possibly do it practically, and it's not legally his authority. He has no fiduciary to do it, and to make them safe requires to put them into prison. The only way to make your child safe is to have a prison, have the school converted into a prison and a compound, an armed compound, keeping out strangers with locked doors, bars on windows, and security details. That's how it's done, with lockdown procedures and cops in the hallway who will take a 5-year-old and put his knee in the back of a squirming 5-year-old who disobeyed and has not cooperated, as we learn at Euronews.com. Go to Euronews.com, which is our sponsor here on the David Tulis Show, and read my post. It's by John Whitehead, the constitutional attorney from the Rutherford Institute in Charlottesville. His a summation of the school and the police state, and how the police state really needs to have schooling and needs to have terror to better obtain the timorousness, the compliance, the faint-heartedness of the public. We are to be shuddering. We are to be in a state of fear. That is always of service to the state. And though I don't think there's any single individual who would say that they want that as a whole, as a collective, since they are admittedly a collective. That idea belongs to the collective system. It is a systemic thought, not, I would say, a thought of any particular individual in that system. David Tulis here. We're arguing that you should love your neighbor by local, brought to you by yournews.com and Nooganomics. I'm the editor of Nooganomics, the writer with the biggest pen, the blogger with the largest pen, using indelible ink, I hope, on your mind by type and by oral presentation here at the free market local economy radio station. That is to say, Nooga Radio. Now, is there a secret? I'm telling you that I'm going to tell you what the secret is of schooling, right? Schooling has some secrets, and one of the best sources for this analysis is the New York Teacher of the Year, a noted historian who spent years in the stacks at New York Public Library, not far from the hellhole in which he taught for nearly a quarter of a century. He taught in various public school hellholes in New York, and his great wisdom has come from time in the stacks. I'm sure he brought his lunch with him, and even though the sign says no drinks or food allowed, he probably had his lunch back in the secret cubby holes in the education section of that massive library in New York. Now he says, and he recounts the secrets, and one is that perhaps the main one is that there's no way you can have social cohesion apart from compulsory schooling, and that school is a major defense against chaos. Without school, there is chaos. And number two, he says that children cannot learn to tolerate each other unless first socialized by mentors. And again, we're told that you can't have private favorable dealings. Society is sundered, society is atomized, and every individual is alone, right? And that comes because we are progressive. We are Republican socialists and we are Democrat socialists, and that is how we view society. It's all sundered. We are here to heal. We, with our administration, are here to heal and to bring together. The only safe mentors for children we know are certified experts in state licensed conditioning. It is a form of behaviorism in Hamilton County School. You, the teacher, the unwitting and perhaps regretful delivery nodule for this conditioning, and children have to be certified from have to be certifiably protected from people like me. Okay, now let me ask you a question: Would Hamilton County School ever hire me? Well, no, it wouldn't. And you know why? I'm not certified. Why? I have not gotten my BS in pedagogy from UT. A course of study that would drain from me any life. It would make my mind numb and submissive to pseudo scientific studies about behavior, about conditioning, about modification, about inputs and outputs, and the way to properly manage the human animal. That's what I would be getting. And there would be nothing left of me, David Tulis, the man with the soul, if I were to go through that. And so I'm not certified, and they would never have me. They would never have me to teach anything, because I'm a danger. You see, I'm a dangerous person. And so this system operates without people like me, compelling children to violate family and cultural and religious religious norms, and believing all the while that does not interfere with the development of their characters or their intellects. And another secret is that children have to be disabused of the notion that their parents, their moms or their dads, are sovereign in morality and intelligence. Your dad, if you have a father, you will view him as the wisest man that you know, right? Even if he's a commoner, even if he's a man who's not well read, even if he's a man who's not well informed by the Bible, because he's your father, and the Father above gave him to you and you to him from his loins in his care, even though he's a working man, right? You are to view, in God's way of thinking, you are to view him as a great source of wisdom, and you are to approach him for understanding. That's the way God created the family. That has the fact that you have parents at home, if you do, is a great blessing. There is a blessing in biology. Children who are born and nursed by their breastfed by their mothers without cesarean section, but come through the canal. There are all kinds of things that happen at every point of human birth and human gestation and human growth in infancy, all that create a connection that give an individual a soul. Children who are taken from their parents by the state for some worthy purpose, no doubt, they often end up as serial killers. And we are to be saved from the idea that our parents are sovereign, that our parents are the experts, and that in intelligence and in wisdom that we can't have that. We must always, if we are in a home, your children are taught at school that, well, you are limited. You, the dad, you, the mom, are limited, and you are not to be trusted too far. You might want to check with an expert on what they're saying about the world as it is. Families should be encouraged to expend concern on the general education of everyone, and they should be unconcerned about their own children's education. In other words, you take a public school ethic, and you are to think about the whole. You are to have a civic duty in view, and not be selfish and care primarily for your own children, your sons or daughters individually. Caller, this is David Tulis. You're live on the air. What's on your mind?
This is Karen Frank.
Who's calling? I'm sorry. This is David Tulis. I'm sorry. I had a call, then I just was not getting the message. But we are at 800-8949, 800-8949. Another secret in Hamilton County, according to John Taylor Gatto, it's from his book, A Different Kind of Teacher. One of several volumes I have from him. I've gotten every book from him that I can get, even though he's very harsh against Calvinists, blaming Calvinists for the schooling phenomenon that we are suffering through today. He is nonetheless very good. He says the state has predominant responsibility for training morals and beliefs. This is a secret that you are to believe this. You are to believe this. Children who escape state scrutiny will become immoral. In other words, if you're not trained in decision making as a model of virtue, you are going to be immoral. Children from families with different beliefs and backgrounds and styles must be forced together, even if those beliefs contradict one another. And then a final ingredient in the public school theory is that compulsion in the name of liberty is a valid use of state power. And there are many other things that, if you read his work, if you read him, you will see these points proven repeatedly. For example, does spending more money make schooling better? Well, no. Actually, if you cut the school budget of Hamilton County in half and cut a quarter out of your tax bill, which is what would happen, schools would suddenly become much better because the deadwood would have to be jettisoned. That kind of cutting will never happen because we think that if you spend more, you're going to get better results. We are children of a very popular delusion here in Hamilton County. We disbelieve in the market, and that's why this whole idea of believing in spending more for tax funded cartels makes us better. It is something that we believe, and as a result, as a fruit of that, we don't have a free market. We don't really have, in many ways, a local economy. And here I am, Dr. Local Economy, right? David Tulis, your host on the David Tulis Show, brought to you by yournews.com and Nooganomics. And I talk about local economy a great deal and sort of advocate for it. And I see the kind of hopelessness in my endeavors, my writing as journalist and an analyst, and my advocate for liberty. I know if I'm fighting an uphill battle because people don't want those things. They don't want a local economy. They don't ever think about it. And I think people really don't want liberty either. Liberty is just trouble. It's just trouble to be free, to be independent, and to be unaccountable. You see, that's what a free man is: unaccountable to all except God. A free man in the Christian conception is directly governed by God through the Bible, and that is a promise of the New Testament. That is a promise of the priesthood of all believers. Right? First, there was the nation of Israel, destroyed for its sins, its unrepentance, its hatred of God, its stiff neck, and now God deals through His church, and the church is comprised of all the elect, all those who repent of their sins, love the Lord Jesus, and believe in Him through faith, right? By grace through faith. That is the church, that body of people, and they're governed by God directly. And so we have a prospect in that promise to humankind. We have a prospect of a free market over time, and we are getting there. We are getting closer and closer to the last day, in which we'll see fewer and fewer elements of slavery. We'll see less totalitarianism. We'll see fewer wars. We'll have probably no police departments at the end, as the end nears. Another vital fact is that there is no compelling evidence to show any connection between the length of schooling and accomplishment. Many countries with far shorter years and days of schooling outperform those with long ones, right? And many claim that there's a connection between test scores and job performance. Well, those connections are simply illegitimate. They are arranged, he says, in advance by only allowing those testing well access to the work. Would you hire a newspaper reporter because he had an A in English? He asks John Taylor Gatto. Have you ever asked your surgeon what grade he got in meat cutting? And then he likes to bring up American notables like John Kennan, from the Washington diplomat who devised the containment policy. He had math and science grades in the secondary school below 60, and at Princeton he had many flunks, D's and C's. Sometimes he said it is the unadjusted student struggling to forge his own standards who develops within himself the thoughtfulness to comprehend. And Kennan, if you remember, was the man who wrote the long telegram about the Soviet Union, a telegram that ran for, about 18 pages. And the long telegram caught exactly the tyranny in the Soviet Union and its great weakness, the great weakness of the Soviet Union. And he presaged its containment and its fall in this telegram, the long telegram. He analyzed why it would fail. And it failed because everyone at the top was full of fear. Fear. And that's what we have in public education as an institution in Hamilton County, in Chattanooga. The operators are fearful not just of gunmen, right? That's what the students were talking about this week, fearing gunmen coming in on a rampage, unprotected, right? Gun-free zones, unprotected. No one in any school able to pull out a 9mm Parabellum or a Glock Mini or anything like that to fire back. These people are. We disbelieve in the local economy solution for security, which is the armed citizen, right? The armed citizen theory from our founding origins is the answer. We're not going to get to that answer. It's impossible to arrive at it. When we talk about armed teachers, we talk about arming teachers and the state doing it. Well, that's not the answer. The answer is the respect we should have for the individual man or individual woman to bear arms, right? To bear a weapon to defend the innocent. That's why men bear arms. You know, if I carry a 45 under my armpit, as sometimes I do, it's not to protect myself, really. It's to be there in God's providence to defend somebody else. It's always women and children for me. And I would say probably for most men who carry weapons with or without a license. It is not just self-protection. It is to be the solution, to be the security solution, right, on the scene when Muhammad Abdulaziz stands up in his convertible and fires his AK into the recruitment center. And another truth about schooling is that training done on the job is far better, far quicker, and thousands of times cheaper than any training done in a school setting. And I think about my news director here at Nooga Radio, Russell Stroud. He's been my associate, my apprentice, and my intern since he was age 16. He's now 22 years old. We've been together 5 years. I haven't paid him what he's worth, but he's learned the business. He's learned the media business, the press business, the radio business, technologically, and also in the art of presenting the news. And so our news director is just a homeschool kid who never went to school. And just listen to him. You think, where does a man like that come from? How does he know the things that he knows? It's all done privately. It's done in the free market. That is the kind of man I offer as an example. So every day when you hear Russell give the news and you hear our radio station pounding out verities of all kinds, whether we are hosting for the moment Sean Hannity, or whether we have Bloomberg on at 1 o'clock and 2 o'clock, or whether we have Cindy Deering on. Cindy Deering with her wonderful Friday show. We're put out here by the free market. We are independent and private. That's the way Americans once were. They were all independent. They had an independent spirit. We don't need government. We don't need supervision. We don't need help. We don't need a program here to help us be better journalists. We don't need to go to school to learn to do our calling. Right? God calls me to be your host here on the David Tulis Show, and I've not been trained for this. I mean, I didn't study broadcasting at the University of Virginia. I didn't touch it, and yet here we are using gifts God gave us and giving and God from capital from God's hand, if you will, and opportunity and a lot of hard work. We're here to serve you, and that is what our goal is at Nooga Radio, to serve you, our listener, at every point, and of course our advertisers. Make sure you notice our advertisers. We are supported by the interest of businesses in the area to reach you. Okay, so if you hear an ad on Nooga Radio, make sure you go by there and do some business with those fine local people here in Chattanooga, and tell them that you love Nooga Radio. Tell them that you love Nooga Radio, and tell them that you're a listener. Right, you are a listener at Nooga Radio, and they will appreciate that. And give them some money.
Traffic, news, and information. Nooga Radio, Digital FM 95.3.